All right, everyone, you know how it's racist when you sort of lump white people in with their ancestors or something? So you say, like, a white person killed 10 black people because they're racist. In some cases they are. So you should feel shame or guilt for this because of white supremacist systems or something. And then you go beyond that and you're like, well, you should also feel guilt for something like 200 years ago one of your ancestors owned a slave. Or white people in general. Like in my case, that never happened because they were from New England, so there was never slavery from Vermont. It was abolished a year before they entered the Union, actually. But you should feel guilt anyway, but you shouldn't feel good about any of the good things they did. So like my Warwick ancestors, hundreds of years ago, that were sailing around and winning glory for England or something, I'm not allowed to celebrate their victories, but if they had a slave or something, I should probably feel personally guilty for that. Find the family through Mormon genealogical records and hand them a $5 or something. They seem to believe this. But now we've gone a step further into anti-white bigotry. And keep in mind, this is a professor being given money by an accredited university. It's interesting, is the University of Colorado at Boulder going to address the fact that one of their professors is virulently bigoted against people based on their white skin? See, Jennifer Ho, which is the link in the description, archived of course, seems to believe that white supremacy is the root of all racial violence. So let's say that you have a Nation of Islam member, like that other dude that fell completely out of the news cycle once it was revealed what the color of his skin and his political ideologies were. He hates whites because he's been told that, it's the white devil, colonizers or whatever, or they're just, they're bad people for some reason. And they want to kill you, of course. CNN tells you so every day, routinely. It's like a religious ceremony every weekend. CNN's hour-long special, Why White People Suck, or something like that. So you've been indoctrinated and told that white people, have it in for you or something. And so that black person kills several white people. Apparently that too is white supremacy after a fashion. The specific examples she's using are things like anti-Asian attacks. This is a big lie and a big trope right now, that white people are responsible for an overwhelming surge in violence against Asians and harassment of people of Asian ancestry. Now, first and foremost, if a person is even more than unremarkably cerebral, if they have even mediocre intelligence, they would understand that Chinese government, which is invoked here explicitly, being responsible for COVID, which it is, through its lack of response and its lies to the world. Number one is not the Chinese people. I've heard very little on people disliking the Chinese at large. It's the government that people have a problem with, and communism, by default, as an extension. The fact that the people there are communist isn't really by choice, it's more like there's no other party to be part of. But China's not Japan. China's not India. China's not Laos or Cambodia or the Philippines. They're completely different civic entities, national entities. In fact, China becoming more and more ethno-nationalistic at the moment. That's why they're putting people in concentration camps. I would note, is Jennifer Ho here going to fault white people for what happens in non-white countries? Like, let's say that there's racial violence, like xenophobic attacks. I wonder if she's aware, for example, there are millions of immigrants in South Africa from other African nations, from all over the place, because it's got a functioning industrial economy, more or less. There are more opportunities there than there are in Rwanda, or Uganda, or Malawi, or something. So a lot of people have gone there. Mozambique and Tanzania, people have migrated in because someone has had relatively good training, they get a skill or something, they're like, well, I can sit here and be completely dirt poor, probably have no choice but to be a farmer, essentially, because there's literally no other economy. If I'm lucky, I can, have a little more land than my neighbor, and then, if there's a famine, the West will come and give people free food, and I'll be out of business because I can't compete with free. Or I can go to South Africa and become a repairman. I can have a commie block apartment. Well, it's better than what I've got now. Right now I've got a dirt-floored one-room dwelling and a few hectares of tenant farming land. But there, I can have my own bathroom, running water. It may not be the cleanest water in the world, but by the standards of sub-Saharan Africa, it's, as a general rule, okay. I can have a car. So I'm going to go and get a job. There was a year there, I can't remember which year it was, 2013 or 14 or something, there was a wave, huge riots against businesses that were owned by people from outside of South Africa. Now, I'm sure that she could find some roundabout reason why that's the result of apartheid or colonialism. But the fact is that it was native black individuals to that civic entity of South Africa, people of Zulu origin in the ethnic sense, in the racial sense, that don't see those other people, despite the fact that they're black, as having anything to do with them. It's like ethnic tribalism versus this overarching idea of race. The same is true in the sense of whiteness. Of course, an Italian is not the same thing as a Spaniard. In the United States, all these groups sort of get smashed together, and actually, in one way, it's actually a good thing. It's the idea of from one, many. It's the idea of the amalgamation, the death of the old world mentality of all of these groups that fundamentally had some similarities, killing each other in brothers' wars every 10 years, and getting together and saying, you know what, fuck that, we want the rights of man, we want to have our own land, farm it, and be left alone, essentially. Now, the U.S. has deviated wildly from this. We had slavery, the abominable institution, and everything else under the sun, and nuclear weapons, and world wars, and civil war, and all this fucking bullshit. But it was an attempt. And by and large, it's worked. Whiteness is considered homogenous in the U.S. Marxists, like Jennifer Ho, do not like this. They don't like the idea of the United States becoming a truly amalgamated society. So they try to split people apart, and where they can't do that, they try to make them feel bad, so that groups that have actually achieved any form of economic independence, therefore they're able to enforce the rights of man, to live as they please and be independent. Oh no, that's dirty and evil. You should feel crippling shame for what you've done. It's very funny, because I guarantee, this is a guarantee, this isn't even a guess. If I looked at the demographics of where Miss Jennifer Ho decides to live, I bet it would tell an interesting story about her priorities. I bet it'd tell I bet she would chalk it up to institutional racism in housing development or something. Oh, it wouldn't be because she chose to live in that neighborhood that just happens to be 90% white and Asian. It has nothing to do with her choice and agency. It has to do with other people are responsible, and of course, invariably they're of white origin. It would be very interesting to see her challenged on this. By the way, it'd be funny to see her debated on this topic by someone with, again, at least mediocre intelligence, because it's such a no-brainer she'd get pounded into the dirt in a verbal sense. Problem? If you went to the University of Colorado at Boulder and said, we're going to have a debate on ethnic issues, or how white people are supposedly terrible according to this bigoted individual, you would just end up with hundreds of leftists showing up to crash the party anyway. They don't want debate. They want an echo chamber where their stupid views can be kept safe. That's why they hate the internet so much and ramble about toxic masculinity, toxic comments on Twitter. We need to remove comments. We need to remove the like function on YouTube. I feel so sad. It's because you get your shit shoved in because you're wrong. Because your worldview is screwy. You can't defend it. It's indefensible. All you can do is claim it to be the case, then act incredulous when challenged on it, and count on backup dogpiling by a bunch of other morons in order to try to silence anyone that brings up pertinent views and pertinent points as to why your opinions suck. You fragile, special, bigoted little snowflake. That's about all. Peace out.